Hello, this is Jasmine Gonzalez. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe if you want to. Also, please feel free to leave comments with things that you would like to see in my channel or ideas for videos, or even if you feel free to want to know something or ask me a question, feel free to do so. I may answer the question or not, depending if the question is not too personal. Um, and also, I can answer in English or in Spanish, so your decision. Um, And this video, as the title implies, about Dave Chappelle special and why I think his comments are transphobic. And also I may try to cover a little bit about possible solutions to the situation with Netflix. Um, Keep in mind that's my opinion. And also before I go into the conversation and before anybody start reacting and commenting on my video channel without even watching this, um, and start posting like, "Oh, but did you watch the special?" Yada yada. But let me tell you this: I did watch the special, and I watched the special not only once but twice. So I did endure watching that special twice. Yeah, I did that. The first time I watched it, was taking notes. The second time I watched to take notes, specifically to keep in mind, see where the points were, and see how my reactions were to the fur. Now that I watched it a second time, so I watched it twice, and let me give you a little bit of a background about me so that way people understand more where I'm coming from. I am Puerto Rican. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I come from a culture that is very machista to an extent. It was at the time, and I don't know if things have changed to a point um, to become better in Puerto Rico, but at the time, homophobic and transphobic. And mostly that, in my opinion, happens because of the island being um, most people in the island are very religious and have strong held religious belief. So to me, growing up, I grew up in a Catholic family, and I went to high school in a Christian evangelical school. I even attended, um, and because of those religious belief, people tend to have the views that and say really awful things about LGBT people. They will condemn um, gay people, and they will even say that criticize transgender women, um, saying that we cannot be women because we were not born with the sex organs that females have, and stuff like that. So I have heard that multiple times in Puerto Rico throughout my whole life, and I even, unfortunately, even also, I have an uncle that is preacher in Puerto Rico, and I don't feel very happy about this because I feel like he's making life miserable for LGBT people down there. Um, Also, I am not rich and famous. I, I'm, I'm poor. Um, I have to work at a Walmart offering mediocre goods and services just to live. Um, so I'm relatively poor myself. I mean, I'm lucky I can pay my basic necessities, but I'm not a millionaire. I don't have a lot of money, honestly. I do have a high level education. I have a degree in engineering. And if I had a choice, I would have preferred to be working in engineering other than a Walmart. But the pandemic has made things so difficult for everybody. So I have to survive somehow. And that's why I work where I work, um, which is at Walmart. And because of that too, I also had to share my apartment with other people. I cannot afford a place by myself here in New York State, mostly because things are very expensive in New York State. Rent is very expensive, and the income that I've been getting, it's barely enough to cover all my expenses, in all honesty. Um, Although I mean, one of the expenses was, if I had made a different choice, I would have made a different choice. But no, to sidetrack, I have to share my apartment with other people, to be able to afford living where I'm living. I'm single, so sometimes in my situation, you have to be living with people that you don't know very well, and that this led me in 2012 to move to an apartment. At the time, I was going to school part time in the theater arts program at Hudson Valley Community College, and I moved to a new apartment, and the person that there was a person that was living there. It was a man, and At first he was very nice with me, but um, once I opened up and I disclosed that I was transgender, during the conversation, he um, began asking me questions and even questioning my me being trans, specifically saying things like, "Oh, but you don't have a vagina, you haven't have that. How can you be a woman?" and all that kind of stuff. Eventually, I tried to answer his questions best I could, but at the same time, I feel like I don't think that things were going to go in a positive direction, and that was just confirmed later because one time in that apartment, I he was in the kitchen and I went to get a glass of water, and when I got in the kitchen to get a glass of water, the person started yelling at me, "Get out of here, piece of shit!" and started insulting me, uh, and even to a point that even I decided I was kind of like, I just need to get a glass of water. No, and he got really angry. Got he he stand up and even approached me, and even I was fearful. Even though I'm a wrestler and I do wrestling and I probably could defend myself, keep in mind that in the wrestling ring things are totally completely different than real life. So he backed me against a wall and almost tried to backhand me, and I never thought I would experience something like that in my life, but I got really scared. And after that, I just tried to stay as much time as I could in my room because I was afraid of even going out. And every time that I will hear the person in the apartment, I will be so concerned and scared. And because I didn't want to get into a violent situation. And again, it was because of the perception that I'm not a woman because I don't have the female sexual organs. And that to me is the issue that I want to raise about the special. At the same time, I during the special, Dave Chappelle mentioned certain points that and say things that were kind of like, okay, this is not that bad. Like he raised each about like when he asked like the audience, can gay people be racist? And the answer to that is yes. As a trans woman being Puerto Rican, I've seen racism in the LGBT community. Um, a little bit of that, not a lot, but I have seen a little bit of that. And it's not the racism that they hate you, but it's racism that is like very. It's difficult to see it sometimes unless you are highly aware of like what people are saying. He also mentioned about a point about having a human experience, and we'll get that into that later. And also the story of Daphne Dorman really hit me hard. Like that story was really sad, and I'm sad that she ended up taking her life. Um, so the story about um, that we're having a human experience, like uh, I do agree on that. We're all having a human experience, and for each trans person, our experiences are different. Uh, but yeah, we're having a human experience just like everyone else. And one time, even my uncle, the one that is the preacher in Puerto Rico, and that is probably making life miserable for GLBT people in Puerto Rico. I got in an argument with him in Facebook, and he wrote to me. He's like, "Think about this. How can you be a woman? Think about this. You're very smart. Think about this. If an elephant loses his trunk, he could be a cat or a dog or this or that. But he's still an elephant." I'm like, Uncle, you have a valid point in there, and I think the point that you have is that regardless of what kind of sexual organs I have, I will still be human. And end of conversation. You know. Um, that doesn't mean, however, that what Dave Chappelle said and the other things that he said were not transphobic, because they were, honestly, and especially considering that I experienced living with a person that almost attack me physically because of similar um, points of view that Dave Chappelle was using in his special to try to make the audience laugh is concerning to me, and and it's concerning because um, that's the same view that my culture also has, and is a reason why a lot of like homophobia and transphobia is present in the society in the society of my culture, and why a lot of trans women have been murdered in Puerto Rico, and including the case of Alexa, who was a trans woman that got killed in Puerto Rico. And if you don't know who she was, feel free to Google that. But she got killed in January of 2020. Um, so yeah, um, to me, the one thing that really made me cringe during the most during the special, the whole special wasn't too funny for me, and I was kind of cringing because I couldn't believe that he was saying those things and that people were laughing at it. Um, I was I was cringy the whole most of the time watching the special, but the one thing that really made me cringe was when he even got into a discussion of talking about TERFs, trans exclusive radical feminist. These are a group of women that they don't see trans women as women; they see us as men, and again they give the same reasons that my culture gave to to not see us as women, that if we're not born with that particular organ we cannot be women, or if we don't experience that we cannot be women, um, which is something that I don't agree. And those type of women, they pretty much want to erase trans people from existence. And the fact that Dave Chappelle ended up saying that he's team turf, that really made me cringe completely. I couldn't believe that that wasn't there. And then he goes into joking about um, trans people surgery, which is disgusting in my opinion. Like I don't know why he needed to say those things. He could have just stopped, but he somehow decided to go there and say those things. And it's sad because trans women of color have been killed because of those same ideas that some people have in society, and even in Puerto Rico, like it's also the same things that some people think um, about trans people too. So it's very similar. So I'm really mad that he even say that and using us for the to try to generate laughs. It's just using our experience to try to generate laughs. Is just it's it's sad. It's like why are you doing that? You don't even understand where we come from. You don't understand the experience that each of us experience, which is unique for each trans person. How dare you speak that way about the experience of a trans person when you don't understand it, and when you don't even agree with our experience too, where you have a different way of thinking too. Um, because in my culture, like my experience in my culture, like if you present any, if you're a man and you present um, any behavior that is considered of the other gender, you could probably get killed. And you don't necessarily need to be part of the LGBT community. Any deviation, like before I transition, I got bullied by other kids for presenting traits of the other gender, and it was a tough situation to deal with, because I'm just me. It's not fun to deal to live being bullied. And I understand you're a black man, Dave Chappelle, and you probably experienced bullying too. But and I'm sorry that you may have experienced that. you have experienced being bullied for being who you are. And I understand it's not the same thing, um, but that doesn't make your experience or my experience um, more important or less important, um, because the things that you say are harmful, and is the reason why trans people in my culture have been killed. and and it sucks that, like, for example, one of the reasons I moved out of Puerto Rico was because I was afraid that if I transitioned out in Puerto Rico, I would get killed, or worse, being put in a mental asylum. Because even my mom, when I came out and I told my mom that I was going to transition, she threatened me to put me in a mental asylum because she thought it was a mental issue. And I'm pretty sure that some members of my family, they probably think that they can pray the devil out of me, um, because that's how far the ignorance goes in my culture. And you saying those things on stage doesn't help at all my culture, or even um, your people, because your people sometimes also have that same viewpoint too. And uh, and it's unfortunate that you said those things in a special, in a comedy special. um Now, as to Netflix goes, I have no plans on canceling Netflix. Interestingly enough, even though I don't like the special, they don't like the special of Dave Chappelle, and I didn't like his comments. And I think his comments are transphobic and are coming from a transphobic uh, and homophobic point of view. And I personally don't agree with what he said. But at the same time, I don't think cancel Netflix is the solution to solve this. I think we need to talk more about our issues. That's why I have my channel, because I can talk about these issues that affect trans people. And not only that, I can do it in English, but also I can do it in Spanish, because also I understand that in my culture, and again in Puerto Rico, when I came out, I don't know if things have changed, but recently they opened a center for trans people in Puerto Rico. But I have never, all my life living down there, I never knew where I could go if I needed help down in Puerto Rico to be able to transition, to talk to somebody that will not either send me to a mental asylum or tell me that I have to pray to God to be cured. So I have this challenge because of that, because at least I can talk about trans issues, talk about my culture, talk what I criticize my culture in ways that I cannot do if I didn't have the channel. And I'm very perceptive, and I think I can talk about the issues. I know from my point of view about the issues about religion. I'm an atheist. I don't. If I want to offend somebody or everybody, I'll have to say it's like I'm an atheist, and there I'll have a lot of people being offended. But that's why I have this channel, and I don't think cancel Netflix for me will do anything to help um, with um, improving trans people lives in Puerto Rico. So cancel Netflix is not going to happen. At the same time, I have seen shows that are quite good that have represented the Latino community. Like there was this show that I watched, and it's in English, and I really recommend it. It's called One Day at a Time, and it had a coming out. Not only had the and I know that this was a remake of a previous show, but the show had Latino characters in it, which is representation for the Latino community. But also they had a coming out story, and you can imagine when I saw that I was watching that show, one of the things that impacted me the most is like, and I could identify was like when one of the characters came out, and that was for me like, oh my gosh, they're touching the issue of coming out in a Hispanic Latino family. Like that is something that I have never seen before, and that is something that in probably in shows in Puerto Rico they would have never done that. They would have never done that because they my culture seen talking about those things as taboo. So like I was happy about that show, and I really recommend that show. Not only that, it was also a character that um, that identify herself as non-binary. So, um, sorry, that identify themselves as non-binary. And but but yeah, so that character, that show was really amazing. So like, forget about Dave Chappelle. Watch one day at a time. It's a series, and it's sad that they canceled it at the end of the third season, because I would have loved to continue watching that series. It made me laugh, um, mostly because of the jokes that they did. But I could identify myself as a character. It was fantastic, and one of the main actors, she was also she did a small cameo in an episode of Angel, which is a series that I've been watching on Hulu. But going back to Netflix, there's also another show that I finished watching in Netflix called La Casa de las Flores, and that show took place in Mexico, and it was almost like a telenovela, like, but they have gay characters, they have um, bisexual characters, and they also have a trans woman character. And I know the character, Maria Jose, um, was played by a man, but at the same time, the way that they wrote that character, I I know that people have an issue in the community when a trans character is played by a man, but the way that they wrote that character, to me, it didn't bother me too much that it was played by a man, because number one, that actor did a fantastic job portraying the character, but also the character that was written, it was a lawyer. It was a trans woman who is a lawyer. When is the last time that you have watched a show that has a trans character besides Supergirl? Because also Supergirl is on Netflix, the series Supergirl, and they have Dreamer, Nia Nal. If you're not into superheroes, but they have one of the best trans characters, Nia Nal is there. But going back, like Acela Flores, the character of Maria Jose is a lawyer, is a professional trans woman, something that I can identify because I went to school and I'm an engineer, you know. And it's sad that even when I try to apply for jobs in engineering, me being trans or me not looking very feminine might be the reason why I may not be getting a job in the first place. So, but seeing that character that is a liar and goes away from all the characters that they have presented in Hollywood, sometimes trans characters that have presented in Hollywood, like um, in a way that drug users or prostitutes or things like that. So like it's totally completely different and refreshing because it's also in Spanish. And even though the show took place in Mexico, I'm still Hispanic, so I can relate to that character. So again, Dave Chappelle, forget about Dave Chappelle. You know, there are other shows in Netflix that have had an impact in recently to me that I'm happy that they are there in that in the platform. And it's unfortunate that we're focusing on one show when there are other shows that actually have a good representation of the community and that we should be watching and we should be commenting and talking about them, you know. And and again, this is why I have my channel, because I can talk about the things, you know. I did a review about La Casa de las Flores, and I did it in Spanish, and there's in my the reviews in my videos. Um, but yeah, I don't think cancel Netflix is the way to go. I think there are other options. And again, I said that like I can talk about issues in my channel, and having my YouTube channel is a powerful tool. I don't know how many people watch it, but I hope that I can be doing a contribution to help other trans people that are going through this that we call human experience and human life, and trying to figure themselves out. And I hope that they can, if they find my channel, that they can find and relate to some of the things, you know. And again, like my channel is not only for me doing videos like this, but also I do videos for like teach people how to make cheap dice trays, or I even talk about my robot puppet because somehow I got into ventriloquism. um I made that robot puppet. It's fun. um uh Talk about like fixing your car if you have a Fiat. I So there are other things that I do that with my channel that is better. This has given me a platform to outreach out there, and I wish more people will watch my channel, and I wish that more trans people will watch my channel. You know, um, but yeah, that's my take. In the end, Dave Chappelle comments are transphobic, were transphobic. They come from a place of homophobia and transphobia, even though he says that he's not transphobic and he never had a problem with the transgender community or anything like that. Um, doesn't excuse his comments, and he has to have assumed responsibility for his comment because his comments can cause harm to the community. Like what happened to me when I was even with a person that tried to attack me. And so, yeah, those things can happen because of his comments. Because they just continue perpetuating ideas that need to be changed, you know? Instead, you can focus more about saying, look, we're having a human experience and I think we need to be respectful. But no, I don't think he said that at all. He didn't say that message. He could have said things different and maybe it would have been better, but I don't know. I'm not him. But he cannot just back down and say, oh, it's your responsibility to understand the jokes. No, it's not my responsibility to understand the jokes. You know, if you said something awful, you need to clarify and explain, you know, um, instead of giving me, sending it for me to be responsible of trying to understand you, you know. That is not my fault, you know. You need to be careful what you say in public, you know. Anyway, that's all I got, in all honesty. I think I went 26 minutes talking about this, and I hope that it wasn't boring. But yeah, a lot of things to think about, and I hope that things get better for the community, and I hope that on Netflix things change and they improve. But so far, do I do like the fact that there are stories out there that they have put in Netflix that have included people of color, Hispanics, Latinx, Latinos, and that have included also characters that I can identify with, like the character of Maria Jose in the La Casa de las Flores. Oh my gosh, like that was for me one of the best characters I've seen in a while, in a series. So yeah. Anyway, that's how I got. Peace out, everybody. Stay safe.